entire globe involving hundreds of different cultures explaining the same phenomenon by different names.
The nature of the footprints, namely their remarkable consistency, their biomechanical appropriateness, those aspects that are extremely compelling.
Hey everyone, how you doing?
Welcome to the Bigfoot Influencers podcast. I'm Dana Halloran.
And I'm Tim Halloran. How y'all doing tonight?
Woo, we're doing great.
How you doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing awesome because
Okay.
we got an amazing guest coming on.
We do.
One of our friends.
It's not even just a guest. He's like a fun buddy of ours.
Yeah.
He had us cracking up last time we saw him about what was that little thing?
We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
We'll surprise you about it.
It was with Sonia, and it was like a little. Was it an egg?
We'll talk about it.
No, we don't need to talk about that here.
So it's his pet rock that we'll discuss.
Pet rock.
Yeah.
Yep.
We may not get into that tonight. But anyway,
cool.
So we're glad you guys are here. We're thrilled to continue to do this and share the amazing things. We're getting awesome feedback. We just want to thank you guys for just all the kind words. And we're doing this, number one, because we love it. We're interested in it. We're passionate about it, and we're trying to entertain and educate. I think there's so many people out here that are amazing, and they have so much experiences that they've done, and whether it's they're investigating, or they're researchers or scientists,
or they're witnesses,
or world explorers that we might be having on tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So so we just we hope you guys you continue to tune in and join, and we're just having a blast. So.
Yep, we are.
So tonight we have the one and only world famous Adam Davies.
Woo,
yeah,
we're so excited to have
him. Adam, Adam, we don't really need to give him an introduction. If you don't know who Adam Davies is, you'll find out tonight. He's a world explorer. He's written books. He's studied cryptids around the world. He's been on television, going way back to Monster Quest. I don't know. We'll pull it, Adam. I know you're in the back room listening. We're gonna think about a funny story. Dr. Jeff already told the story about you and him, but if we can top that, maybe we'll think about a funny story while you've been traveling. So, Adam, just excited to have him here. He's such a good guy. He's speaking. We'll talk about his speaking engagements coming up in the future. And he's just fascinating, and he's worldly. So let's bring him in.
Yay, Adam!
Hello, guys. Good evening. Good evening.
Woo-hoo!
There he is.
Hey, Adam, how are you?
I'm good. I'm ready to get straight into that story about the pet rock with Tim. No,
We can. There's only so many things we can discuss on YouTube. But we certainly had a good laugh, that's for sure.
And continue to laugh about it.
Right.
So, Sonia, if you're listening, you'll laugh. You know what we're talking about. So how you doing tonight?
I'm very well. Yes, very well.
Awesome.
I live in Tennessee now, so I get an opportunity to go out in the woods a lot because I only live like 40 minutes from the wilderness. And although I've traveled all over the world, I can still go out and do stuff here in Tennessee, and I love it here. So I'm good.
Well, cool. Tennessee, I was just listening to Matt Pruitt and Cliff Barackman and James Boba Fay on their Beyond Bigfoot and Beyond podcast.
Mm-hmm. Beyond Bigfoot? Is that what you were going to say?
No, it's Beyond Bigfoot and Beyond. They're the extras.
That's my God. Okay, cool. Okay.
and well, Matt was just talking about the interesting areas that are squatchy, quote unquote squatchy, and Tennessee, Kentucky, Eastern, that area where you are is a hotbed. There's a lot of stuff going on. So
yeah,
because where are you situated? Are you in Eastern Tennessee?
Yes, I am. The nearest place. I'm probably about less than 45 minutes away from the Smokies. And I can be off trail and in true wilderness in an hour from my house, door to door. So it gives me a good opportunity to be out all the time. And I am. so there we are.
That's great. So how long is it going to take you to get the Tennessee accent?
I'm never going to get the Tennessee accent.
No, honey. He's still working on his normal American accent.
I've had the British accent. I've been here like 7.5 years, and I don't think my accent is any different. Maybe some British people might tell me it is.
When you go back home, do they make fun of you and say that you sound American, or when you talk on the phhone?
When I talk on the phone, no, I asked one of my closest friends the other day, AD, I said, do I sound any different? He says, no, not really.
Good.
I mean, the only thing, in terms of accents, the only difference is, I think I understand the nuances, the differences in the American accents much better now. Everything sounds, at first, American to me, and now I can tell the difference. I can tell you a story because I'm speaking at Gatlinburg.
Couple weeks.
A few weeks, yeah. But I did it like a few years ago. And at first, when people were still wearing masks, so I couldn't see people's lips. And some guy came up to me and I could not understand the Southern accent at all, not at all very well. And it sounded like this. He basically said, I could just hear him mumbling through the mask, and I thought, I don't know what he said. And I said, I'm so sorry, sir. I said, please speak a little bit slower so I can understand what you're saying. And he went, and I just looked and I thought, I can't ask him a third time. He's going to seem rude. So I said, thanks very much. And he said, thank you. And went away like that. And I was,
thank you very much.
But now I can see the differences. I can hear the difference. Obviously, I live in Tennessee now, so I can understand what everybody's saying. But the last thing I'd say about accents is, I don't watch much TV, but I like some documentary dramas, and there was a show called Shetland, set in the islands above Scotland, and it's there was a very
Scottish is like ooh.
Scottish. Well, I found to my shock, not horror, that's the thing, but to my mild amazement, that I actually had to subtitle that because I couldn't understand what the guy was saying, and I was like, oh my god, because I'd not heard the accent for what 7.5 years. Couldn't understand it. So while I'd say my accent hasn't changed, I say my understanding is different. Yeah, I understand all American accents and don't understand some British ones now. So there we are. So
where are you from exactly? Like, what town are you from?
I'm from the north of England,
okay.
Cheshire. The nearest city is Manchester, but it's gotcha. More sort of Cheshire is where I've grown up. And sort of the Cheshire-Derbyshire border. So some people may have seen that film Wuthering Heights where Mr. Darcy jumps into the lake and all that. Well, yeah. That's the area sort of where I used to go out hiking and walking and everything else. That's like my back door, if you like, because it's set in a place called Lyme Park, which is only about 10-15 miles from where I lived. Yeah.
And like similar to you, although Adam was doing it here. When you were in California, you were teaching English, right, to international students?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I taught English as a second language in Italy for 8 years.
Yes. I mean, you told me that over dinner because we were sharing a few stories about you doing that. And you told me about all the boats taxi boats in Venice, because I've never been to Venice.
Yeah. I lived in Venice, and the whole city is on water. So there's no cars. So
you had to do that.
Fire boats and ambulance boats and all kinds of things.
I'd like to go. It'd be really interesting.
Well, you should go.
You've been everywhere else, Adam.
I'd love to go. I'd love to go. But I did enjoy, the reason we got onto it was because I was saying I really did enjoy teaching Italian students, because Italians, I mean, this is a generalization, but the Italians had a great sense of humor. They really, you could have a good laugh with them. And the British, one thing about people understand is, if the British are very formal with you, it means they don't know you or they're not very comfortable with you. The greatest compliment somebody British can give you is if they tease you, yeah? Because if they tease you, it means they like you, yeah? If I'm teasing you, I'm laughing and joking about something, it means I like you. Certainly if you're from the north of England, where I'm from, the south is probably a bit different. But I'm
the same way, Adam. If I'm teasing you, it means I like you, isn't it true?
Yes, that is true.
Yeah. So anyway, I was a teacher there for years. I enjoyed being a teacher. It was good fun. Yeah. It's
a nice rewarding feeling for sure.
So what was Adam Davies like when he was a youngster, when he's a child?
How old are we talking about?
Whatever you can remember. What were you like growing up?
I was very determined. I mean, and I'll give you a very specific story, which really shapes my character into why I did expeditions. So, because I think these two things I'm going to tell you, the most formative part of my personality when I was younger. They shaped everything that I was. So when I was very young, I had a sister that died of neuroblastoma, which is a form of cancer. And that was very unpleasant, as you might imagine. But what that gave me a realization of, even at the age of 6, was that you never know when you're going to go, and you might as well make the most of life. Yeah, I hadn't crystallized that philosophy. I was 6 years old, but it definitely influenced how I approach life in the future. Yeah, people are always saying to me, "Oh, I'll do that one day, one day, one day." And there's a song by the Specials. It's later than you think. Yeah, don't wait, do it now. Yeah, if you can. Yeah, was always my philosophy. And the second thing was, I was hit by a cop's son on the sidewalk with
I'm sorry, you were hit by
a cop's son, a policeman's son.
So what do you mean hit by a car?
I'm going to explain. By a motorbike, yeah?
Oh.
So he's driving a motorbike. He hits me. I was just walking down the sidewalk. He comes round a corner and hits me on that. And my leg was smashed, and they told my parents I'd never walk again. They said, "Oh, you never walk again." Imagine them, poor things. They just only lost a child before, like, left 18 months or so. And then they said that. But I was determined that would not be the case. And I took up swimming, and within a year, I was my city champion. Yeah, I started doing Olympic swimming. I decided not to carry it on. Well, they decided not to carry on, but and then my leg was fine. It was healed. The doctors were like, "Well, there you go." And so I went from that to that. So I think, and then to encapsulate that, to add to that, I always had a great love of nature and tracking, not hunting animals. There's not the hunting culture in Britain that there is in America. But I always liked being out in nature, tracking animals. I was always interested in mysteries. So looking for unknown animals, having adventure appealed to me. And I thought, well, I have got determination. Yeah, if I can do that swimming thing and make myself worthy of starting to train for Olympic squads, I can from after a year of being told never walk again, I'm sure I can push myself out and do things. So gradually I did survival training, etc. But that was what I was like. I've always been a risk taker by nature, but I've always loved being out in the wilderness. So that was what I was like. And also, as I got into a teenager, it won't surprise you to know, Tim, that I like to party.
Yeah.
So Adam, why don't you tell us, briefly, just some of the different countries that you've been to, whether it was, doing your, cryptozoology, or just in general, like what places have you been to?
Well, I've traveled all over the world, but I suppose your audience, I guess, would be more interested in the countries that I've done research in, I guess.
There you go.
So I've been to both Congos.
Okay.
I was one of the first people ever to cross the Lacula Basin, which was hell on earth, according to John Blashford Snell, the Colonel. And it was. So did that.
You proved it.
I was looking there for the Makila Mbembe, which is the Congo dinosaur, so I went looking for that. Mongolia is the size of Western Europe. It's pretty big. So I did a film for National Geographic looking for the Almas, which is like their Bigfoot type creature. But I also went the year before that looking for the Mongolian death worm in the desert around there, which is pretty cool. I got, where else I've been? China, looking for the Yeren, and that story with Jeff and Jeff Meldrum, Dr. Meldrum, and I pushed that. I wanted to go there, and that was a good deal I did with Monster Quest. The orang pendek in Sumatra, the bipedal primate there. The Mandi Barung in India, another type of bipedal primate, because they're my main interests. Seljord serpent in Norway, Loch Ness monster. What else? Russia, looking for the Almasti. Been to Australia. Where else am I thinking of? Canada, obviously, US. I'm sure there's other places, but they slip my mind right now. But lots
a lot.
You probably have like the best passport with all your stamps and stuff. That has to look good.
Well, a lot of them are still in England. I never brought them over to America when I originally got here because I'll say, when I landed in San Diego, I'd come from Nepal, and San Diego, as you know, is a hot place, dry.
Mhm.
And I literally turned up with a backpack where I'd been filming with Josh Gates and landed in San Diego. So nearly
Wow.
all that stuff is still in England.
That's awesome.
And most of the audience should know who Josh Gates is as well. So
Right. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did
You
the
know,
Expedition
yeah.
Unknown series.
yeah.
Yeah, he did
Yeah.
the Expedition Unknown series for people who don't know. Yeah, but that film still plays every now and again. Every now and again, somebody will message me on Facebook saying, "Oh, I just saw you on that." Yeah, and I was thinking, I must be like, it was such a nomad feeling. I thought I would turn up in San Diego, and I thought I have absolutely nothing I can wear in this city. It's just a backpack with like cold weather gear.
Right. That's funny. That's great.
so you've been to all these different places. What would you say was the most dangerous place and why?
The Congo, without a doubt, is the most dangerous place. The first time I went with the colleague there. We had to get. I've got PTSD. I think you know from the airport, and one of the reasons is because I had to basically shift and find my way out to get out of the Congo. And then it wasn't. I didn't get it as a result of that one trip, but it was when I went back the next year, and I flew over Brazzaville. Because the first incident was in Kinshasa, because there are two Congos, the Democratic Republic and the Republic. And I remember looking down at this city, this vast city with millions of people in it, thinking, oh, they've got no lights on at all, no lights, because there were just small fires burning. And I thought, oh, here we go again. But, you'll get boy soldiers there who will kill you for a packet of cigarettes. And everywhere the culture is what's called a petit cadeau, which is a small gift. And, people don't earn salaries, in the way that you guys do. You get by bribery and you get by giving people things. And that was very dangerous, I got shot at across the Mbangi in another part of it and watched artillery flares go overhead. And, that was definitely the most dangerous place.
And life-changing for you, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, I was very, I saw some amazing things too. Amazing things, I'm very blessed in all my travels to have seen some remarkable things. Gorillas, orangs, I've seen many great apes in the wild. I've been to places that other people haven't been before. I know I've put my foot down on earth that nobody else has trod, and that's a remarkable feeling. But I paid for it, both physically and psychologically, I think.
Yeah, I bet. So let's get into something that's fun.
Let's get into some Bigfoot stories. Adam. Like what are some like witness experiences that you've had?
Of Bigfoot or cryptids generally? We
can say whatever, honey. Yeah. Cryptids in general, or Well,
let me tell you a cryptid in general. Because I want people to understand how I approach things, and then we can talk about Bigfoot if that's okay. So one of the things that I was very interested in, one of the things I did was look for something called the Cell-Yawed serpent, and that's their equivalent of the Loch Ness monster, and in Norway. And what I did was I worked with the Norwegian Swedish team, but we had a British team, and I looked at areas where the lake had been, there'd been concentrations of fish. And I cross-referenced those with the most recent sightings. And I put observation boats with different people on the lake. I got them to learn the difference between what might be something floating, awake, and other things. You have to get your eye in. It takes days, and it's very, very boring. It's not exciting learning. Hours and hours sat in a boat day after day. But it paid off because I saw the Cell-Yawed serpent. I saw it move. I saw it move across, undulating, and it had barbs on its back, which were very similar to the 17th century woodcut. Why can I make the assertion that I saw it? Why couldn't it be a wake or a water or a log or something like that? Well, we dropped a hydrophone in the water, and the Marine Research Institute in Bergen did a blind analysis of the hydrophone, which are the noise emissions, and they came to the conclusion In fact, Dr. Soldal, who was the head of it, said, "I'm astonished to say it's an unknown species." So I can make that assertion, and that was because it's backed up by scientific analysis, and it's also backed up by hours and hours and hours of field work in order to get there.
Right.
One thing I want to say is I'm not precious about this stuff. I am not a scientist, but I hand it over my field work. If I think it's of a sufficiently qualitative standard, I will hand it over to scientists to analyze. And, sometimes they'll reject it. In fact, most of the time they'll come up with a plausible explanation as to what else it might be. And I'm good with that. I don't then have a tantrum and say it's a conspiracy, they're all out to get me, That's it. And you can see it, for example, when working with Jeff Meldrum. So with the orang pendek in Sumatra, I got print that was analysed by Jeff, Dr. Meldrum, and also by Dr. David Chivers, me and my team did, I should say, by Dr. David Chivers. And both of them came to the conclusion that it was from an unknown primate. Chivers was at that time the world's leading primatologist, so he has an excellent scientific pedigree. So you've got two independent scientists, don't know one another, analysing something, coming to the conclusion it's an unknown primate. That's good science, yeah? There's another occasion when I brought a print back, which I thought might be the orang pendek, and Jeff didn't think so. Dr. Meldrum said, "Well, I don't think it is. I think it's a bear problem." And
I think it's what?
A bear, yeah?
A bear.
Yeah. There's a type of bear there, a sun bear that's there. And that's okay. You know what I mean? That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
He's the scientific expert. Because what I'm interested in is getting qualitative scientific evidence which can be corroborated to verify the existence or otherwise of these creatures. And it's a very high bar. Yeah, very high bar. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. And it has to be that. And there has to be no ego involved in it. Yeah, look, if somebody finds something with Bigfoot tomorrow, I'll be delighted. Yeah, be delighted. Yeah, but I think there's too much posing about this substance, which is ridiculous.
Do you think there's like a lot of competitiveness, or?
Well, that's a waste of energy. I just want. I'm interested in getting evidence that can be analysed and corroborated. And if it isn't, then I'm fine. I move on and try and get more evidence, and that's the way I work.
So you were talking about this experience that you had, and you were in Norway. And what is this cryptid that you saw?
That's called a celluloid serpent.
A celluloid
Serpent.
Celluloid.
Serpent.
SELJORD. Celluloid.
And so it's like how would you describe this in dimensions? And
it's difficult to give exact dimensions, but it's black. It's thin. Yeah, it's a serpent-like creature. And rather than moving through the water like that, like an eel,
right,
it undulates through the water, and it has barbs on its back. Yeah,
And how long is it?
Difficult to estimate. At least 20 to 30 feet.
Wow.
Okay.
I don't know.
And is it like a snake, or does it have flippers, or?
Well, it has those barbs. Yeah, so they're more pointed.
Right.
Yeah? Like I think about like a thorn in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, is it like a plesiosaur, or is it more like a snake?
No, it's not like a plesiosaur.
Okay.
Plesiosaurs are bigger animals,
right?
Yeah, with fins, and one of the things you can do with plesiosaurs, say for example, let's take away the behavioural aspect of a plesiosaur, right? And we can only speculate, but we can do some calculations based on the general body mass of a plesiosaur to conclude that Loch Ness, for example, which is where some people have speculated could Loch Ness have plesiosaurs. For those people who don't know plesiosaurs, they're a type of aquatic animal in the dinosaur period. Just very briefly, but we can calculate from that the amount of quantities of fish that plesiosaurs would need in order to be and have a viable population. I mean, Loch Ness just doesn't have that capacity. Yeah,
right.
So we can dismiss plesiosaurs as living in Loch Ness, okay, based on mathematical probability of the mass of the creature. With the cellular serpent, just think of it as a long black snaky thing with barbs on its back, and I never saw its head, so I can't tell you. But often they talk about them having faces that akin to a horse. Is obviously different, but that's the most common thing.
Right.
Okay.
And because a snake and I guess with an eel, they both go this way, right? They both swim.
Yeah. And one of the things that they do with the Marine Research Institute, they analyze all of the emissions from these creatures. So they've got a whole bank of eels, and eels communicate with one another. So it's pretty easy to dismiss the fact that it's an eel. Yeah.
Right.
Whereas in Loch Ness, I think that they found a lot of eels, mutant eels, for want of a better word, really big eels, and there's a possibility that the Loch Ness monster is in fact a type of eel. Yeah, but this is a very different lake to Loch Ness, very different environment.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
So you would say that was your most impactful experience of witness experience of a cryptid?
That's the one I've got some scientific evidence that I saw directly. I'd say I come very close to seeing the orang pendek in Sumatra. I didn't see it. I was with there were four of us, and I speculated that the orang pendek didn't have particularly good hearing, not superior to ours anyway. Because there's a number of, and the reason I came to that conclusion is there's a number of eyewitnesses who had talked about they'd been in a classic orang pendek story. Is I was in I'm a farmer. I was in a field. I saw them eating sugarcane at the end of the field, and I surprised them, and they ran away, or they were fighting or something. So, two of the guys went one way, and two of the guys went the other. I was trying to get a pincer movement, and two of them saw it, and I missed it by about 20, 30 seconds, which was very frustrating at the time because I would have loved to have seen that. I've been to Sumatra 8 times, and I would have loved to have seen that.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of local indigenous stories. It
goes back centuries.
Why don't we give our audience a little description of what the orang pendek is, where it lives, just for our newer viewers.
Okay, so the orang pendek is about, let's do an average. It's about 5 feet tall or thereabouts. It's stocky. It's very powerfully built. And very strong. So I saw it toss aside a log with ease. Yeah, because I followed a trail. I didn't see it. I followed a trail, and on that trail it had tossed aside a log with ease because you could see where it walked. And it took a few of us to even lift this thing off the ground. So it's strong. See, like a chimp would be. Yeah, chimps are much stronger than people. So
it's bipedal, Adam?
Yes, it's bipedal. Yeah, bipedal.
Will they go on 4s though? Do they think?
It can do. It's because if you look at its prints though, it has a capacity to be arboreal. Yeah, it has that distended hallux there, so it can do that. So I think it spends a lot of time in the trees as well, you guys. So, but it's evolved to walk bipedal. I think it's a symbol of an example of parallel evolution. So it's evolved. I think it's a derivative. It's related to the orangutan. I think that sort of genus, but it's evolved to walk bipedally in the same way we evolved to walk bipedally, and it evolved to walk bipedally. In my opinion, was a response to Danu Toba, which was a massive volcanic eruption in the area many thousands of years ago, and the ecosystem became extremely poor. And I think it evolved to walk bipedally as a reaction to its environment. It's the same way as we evolve in a reaction to our environment. Yeah. So that's what I think it is. It's got a very human-like face. And it's probably, as I say, I've been there 8 times, and it's often considered the most plausible of all the cryptids, even by people who are quite skeptical because of the environment.
And what is the area that it lives in, Adam? I'm sorry.
It lives in Sumatra in Indonesia.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where it lives,
and it's it's in the jungle. That's right,
in the jungle. Yeah.
Okay.
But sightings that, if anything, the jungle is becoming more diminished as farmland expands. So there's always a chance that people will come across it.
Yeah, timber and farmland and such. Yeah, just as we have here.
Exactly. Now I want to make a point about Bigfoot. Because you mentioned a good question about observation. This is something that I feel quite strongly about. your tree structure that you see, you say it's made by Bigfoot. Did
Well-
you see Bigfoot make the tree structure?
Hey, let's
No.
clarify this. You're not. We didn't say that.
No,
You're
no,
saying
no.
in general. I know. I'm just messing with you.
No, I'm just saying it. I'm throwing it out there. Not you guys.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, for your audience, yeah. That's what they do. They make audience don't listen to them. What they do is they make tree structures in their back garden. As soon as this is over, that's what they're going out to do. No. But the point is, if you see a tree structure, you know objectively it's far more likely to have been made by a survivalist or a Boy Scout or something else. Yeah, you can't say, "Oh, I've seen a tree structure, it must be made by Bigfoot." It's very, very, very unlikely that it's been made by Bigfoot. Nobody has ever seen, to the best of my knowledge, any Bigfoot ever making one. Yeah, anywhere. So why do you think that? It's because you want to think that. Yeah. And you should always consider the more plausible. If you see something black, I see many bears in Tennessee. I had a very unpleasant encounter with a bear only the other day. I'll probably put some stuff up about it. But if you see something black going through the forest in Tennessee, just for example, your first thought should be that is a bear,
Right.
not that's a Bigfoot. Bigfoots must be very rare, I would think. Otherwise, we'd see them all the time. And we'd be going out. I mean, certainly in Tennessee, you would all the time. So I think your starting point when you have an observations, and this is not to take away from the veracity of anyone's encounter is, but if it's eye shine in the woods, it's not necessarily Bigfoot. If it's a tree structure, it's not necessarily Bigfoot. If an apple's on the ground and somebody's taken some food from it, a bite from it, it's not necessarily Bigfoot. In fact, it's very, 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 very unlikely to be Bigfoot. And that's what you should start from, in my opinion.
It's a collective group of the evidence you find. Yeah, because if you don't see the animal doing it, whether it's an audio or a tree knock or anything, you can't say it did it,
No.
So I want to ask you about tree structures, though. So since you brought it up, so in your travels around the world, I mean, did you ever see tree structures anywhere else in the world?
No.
Okay. That's
only
important.
in North America. It makes me inherently suspicious of tree structures.
Okay.
I think I'm not taking away that Bigfoot could make something. Orang's nest, for example, and you can see that in the jungle where they make nests, and gorillas do too. Let's just use those as examples.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm inherent. I think it's a personal thing, but I think there's different qualities of evidence that you can gather as a field researcher. Yeah, and tree structures for me is the bottom of the pile. I'd have a look at it if it was a tree structure, but it could be many things.
It could be nature. We have lots of tree structures here in Delaware, and we don't have Sasquatches here in Delaware. Where we live is practically an island, and so there's just no way.
Yeah, I mean, it could be snow, for example, that warps them. That's just one thing. Yeah, or as you say, nature. It could be anything.
Yeah.
But so I don't tend to pay a lot of attention to tree structures. I'm not that interested. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Other people want to do that's fine. It's their business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Audio, I'm interested in it, more interested than tree structures. But again, is it going to prove the existence of a Bigfoot or contribute to it in any substantial way? Well, not really. Yeah. I've heard some amazing audio, and I'm always very interested in it. But it's not going to, if you ask any of the sensible, can we produce a paper on that audio? Is it going to sway the scientific community? Then I would say it probably isn't. Yeah.
I mean, I personally think that there's the only thing that would guarantee would is if we had a live one or a dead one, because we even have, like, if you look at the Patterson-Gimlin film, it's footage of, something.
No, sorry, carry on, Dan.
Yeah. And then just in the sense that video, audio.
Yeah, we need to
witness stories. I mean, really, maybe the only thing that's like hardcore evidence for me, in my opinion, would be footprints.
Well, let me come back to you.
Yeah.
Raised a good point. I think this is a big question. Footprints are good evidence, and you can learn a lot from the behavior of the creature. I know some people tend to dismiss them, but I don't. I think footprints are interesting. I think you can learn a lot about the creature and its anatomy by an analyzation of footprints. So I think footprints for me are interesting. Then you upgrade to the next level, which is video, and anything to move the story forward in terms of pictures and photographs would have to be of a better quality than the Patterson Gimlet footage. Yeah, it would have to be much better than that. These photographs that we all get sent of blurry bushes with a red circle around them, this pareidolia thing, just not interested. How many of those do we all get in our inbox all the time? And then the people get snotty. If I say I don't see anything in those, they're like, oh, well, can't you see it? You know, Bob, Fred, and my uncle Derry, they can all see it. Why can't you see it?
Right.
Is something wrong with you? No, it's just like,
and not to discount it, maybe it is one, but
Yeah.
the photo doesn't tell us it is.
Right.
Yeah.
well, yeah. Well, I think it's because your heart is not pure enough to see it, Tim, and that's what it is. But I mean, it's shit. But it has to be of a very high quality. Now, I think there's a difference here. I think if it was somewhere like Sumatra and we got a very high quality photograph of an orang pandak, then that would push the story forward a lot more. And there may be things that could be done. That's a whole different long reasons why. But let me just say that as a snapshot. So getting something like an orang pandak photograph would be very interesting. With Bigfoot, it's extremely difficult because the quality and standard of evidence is going to have to be so high. Then that photograph may move the story forward. If I got a really good video footage, it may do, yeah? But you'd have to handle that very carefully. And one of the ways you wouldn't handle it is by putting it on Facebook. But there'd be different ways you'd have to deal with that. It would need some qualitative analysis, and there are lots of ways you'd go about that. But if you are somebody who has got that amazing footage, don't stick it on Facebook. Get it analysed by experts. Right. I think one of the things working with some of the members of the scientific community, I think would again push the story on even further, would be good analysis of different hair samples and or tissue samples. That would be great. I don't think you would ever be able to get a live one. I think it would just be impossible. So the question becomes, do you find a dead body or something else like that? Personally, I would not shoot one. I just would not do it. And I've met people, when I was in Sumatra, I met a guy who was a very tough hunter. And he would kill many animals without thinking. That was the way he was, and that was how he survived. And he said to me, I had the orang pandak in my sights, the Sumatran orang pandak, he said, and I was going to shoot it. And I was going to shoot it because I knew people like you were looking for it as well. I thought, right, how much money can I get off him for this body? And he was very honest about it.
Right.
He didn't know I had no money, but he thought I was, because he thought I was from the West. He thought I was rich. And he said, I saw his face. And he said, it looked just like, you, Tim. Just looked like you.
You look like Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah, just looked like Tim.
That was actually me out there that he saw, Adam.
You need to stop running around naked in public, Tim. I've told you. You're going to get caught one of these days.
In Sumatra, they'd be like, what is this white dude out here doing?
That's why he says he travels a lot. Don't believe him.
I'm not actually in Florida. I was in Sumatra running around.
But he said it had a human-like face, and he said it put him off. He said I couldn't do it. He said, because I am many things, but I am not a murderer. Not a murderer.
Right.
And I understand that. So I would never shoot one. I accept that the best evidence is habeas corpus. Show me the body, yeah? Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to be a person that does that for my own ethical reasons. If I see a Bigfoot, and I am yet to see a Bigfoot, I've heard them, I think. I've seen prints and etc., but I've not seen one. And I always say that if people ask me. But if I see one, I'm hoping that I will be able to get some good quality photographic evidence. I'm hoping that I'll be able to get some hair samples if there's any around. I'm hoping I will be able to have that analysed by the scientific community. And I'm hoping that that will set up a research project in the area where I found that evidence, in order to move the story forward. And that's the best I can hope for. Yeah? I don't want to be the man that shot Bigfoot. No.
You hear that a lot with hunters. There's many stories where they're not looking for Bigfoot, but they're out hunting, and they put them in their sights, and they say, just like you said, Adam, they look at them and they can't shoot them because they're too human-like.
Yeah, and I think those stories carry some weight when you're analysing evidence. I worked as a lawyer for many years. I think you know that, in Britain, and I cross-examine people. And I like stories like that when they tell. I also like stories where people come across them accidentally. I'm not going to name this person, but one of the stories I thought was most interesting was a guy who was out in Florida. I went to the area where he'd been, because I've been all over the US. I mean, some of you people might know I've been all over the US looking for evidence of Bigfoot. But he'd been on his kayak, looking, fishing for red snapper. He wasn't interested in Bigfoot. He thought it was a load of bullshit, And he'd been, and he was, and he came across one looking for shellfish in the very shallow area there, and it roared at him, and turned over his kayak in panic, and eventually righted it, and he fled the area. But as he was telling, he wouldn't go to the area where it was. We knew where it was, and I worked with the research team down there with Davies. He was a good man, and but as he was telling the story, his hands were shaking like that. And then his body started shaking. He was so terrified by that story, and I like the story. I'm more interested in those stories, forgive me, than people say, well, I've seen it 10 times and I feed it, and it's in my back garden, and I call it Genevieve or whatever. Because well, why are you contacting me then? Take a picture of bloody Genevieve. If it lives in your back garden, take a picture of it. If you take a picture of it, then we'll start talking. But don't. And then it's like, well, Genevieve doesn't like me out taking pictures of her, or you're not getting a picture of Genevieve because your heart is not pure when you're asking this question. There's always some crappy reason.
So there's
crappy. That's crap. And I'm not, that's just what I think. I'm at the stage now where I'm saying what I think.
Good for you, Adam. You should, because they're, what do they call those guys that have like habituators?
Yes.
Is that what they call them?
Habituators.
So they've got
habituation has worked. It's no longer practiced, but it has worked in the past with chimps, and it can even be used to make contact with tribes. They don't do it with chimps anymore, but you can speed up the process. But if you are suggesting you're a habituator, the progression from that is that you have a special relationship with said creatures. Well, if you are making that public, and particularly if you're making money and writing about that, so you're taking my money and you're saying that you are a habituator. I'm buying your book, then you need to substantially give me evidence then. Yeah. I think there's a difference here. If I don't know, Jenny says she's a habituator and she's got a Bigfoot living in her back garden, fair enough. It's not my problem. I don't believe her until I see some evidence, but it's not my problem. But if Jenny then writes a book and Tim's buying it, he pays $20 for Jenny's book, then Jenny in my opinion becomes open to scrutiny because she's making money off her claims and they need to be substantiated. Right. And that's the difference for me.
That makes sense.
That does make a lot of sense.
So what else? Has there been any other interesting stories, Bigfoot stories that you've been told personally that have kind of made you think twice or shook you or said, wow, this person really saw something out there?
I mean, I've interviewed many witnesses over the years. I think, and as I used to cross-examine people for the British government. I mean, I'd say most people have good intentions. Some people are complete fantasists and make stuff up. Some people have wishful thinking. and some people, there's some substance to it, but there is a consistency of evidence, movement and behavior, and some of the things I look for, without giving it away too much, which indicate to me that Bigfoot is a real creature, and that's been, not just over my own interviews, but over the history of the creature in the United States and how it's formed. I think I spent some time with some Native Americans in Central California, and some of their stories, particularly the ape-like movements that they described, this particular tribe I was with in their area, I thought were particularly persuasive. Yeah.
And especially with, I guess, some of our Native Americans and First Nations individuals in Canada, sometimes they're not. I mean, nowadays you're exposed to television no matter where you're at, but some of them aren't. So, how does this group of tribal members, how are they describing the same thing that this other one is, 2,000 miles away?
Well, they are. I mean, I've worked with both First Nations and Native Americans, and that's a fair point. I mean, they're lengthy stories. They'll tell, it could be 100 years old, and they'll tell it as though it happened yesterday, some of them. Particularly when I was in Canada with the First Nations, that was fascinating. But to go to your point, here's a story which is not about Bigfoot, but this is interesting. So I was on the border of Mongolia, Kazakhstan, because after National Geographic went home, I decided to go in a little jeep with my two Mongolian buddies and cross the whole of Mongolia with just a crappy handheld GPS. There's no roads or anything to navigate my way back, and that was a good adventure in itself, just doing that. But we stopped at this ger, which is like the felted tent. Bill Gay, who was my translator, he said, "Oh, well, the guy here has seen an almas." And I said, "Well, what does it look like?" And I'll just give you a synopsis. And he said, "Oh, well, I was out tending to his goats, and first of all, I heard this high pitched, and then I saw it, and it was about 6 foot, conical head, sort of black, ready hair, and it walked very fast and bipedally." Yeah, that was one. Okay. I'm filming with Josh Gates. This is probably, I can't remember exactly the years, but at least 15 years later, in Nepal, on the way to Everest, talking to a farmer. And this guy says, "Well, I saw it." Well, I said to him, "How did you see it?" And he said, "Well, I was up in my higher pastures." And he said, "I saw it, and it had a conical head, and it had sort of reddy black hair. And the first thing I heard was a high-pitched whistling sound. And I thought it was one of my friends. And then I saw it, it was moving really rapidly, bipedally." So here you have two people, thousands of miles apart. They couldn't possibly have heard one another's story, living in, let's just say, not technological conditions. And they're describing the same behavior of the same creature. Yeah. And I think that's interesting. That's interesting evidence. It's not scientifically determinative. I'm not saying that. But I think the anecdote is very persuasive.
That's fascinating. And a lot of the things that people experience are similar, that they experience, in, whether it's Mongolia or here in the, in North America, with the creatures, the conical head. I mean, aren't there similarities, even though they're, I assume, what do you think? Do you think they're different animals? Do you think they're somehow, related down the genus somewhere, or, what are your thoughts?
Well, starting point is we don't know. We don't know any of this. Yeah. And anybody who says that they know, they don't know. Then it comes into my personal speculation based on traveling. I've traveled, looking on the Pacific Northwest, the Central, all across many states, looking for evidence in the last few years related to Bigfoot. I'd say, as a broad brush, the ones in the Pacific Northwest would tend to be larger. The ones in Florida tend to be smaller. Yeah. but that's consistent with their environment in the same way. Let me give you an example with elephants that people might not know. So most people will be familiar with the savanna elephants, the big African and Indian elephants. And the African elephants are bigger than the Indian elephants. Yeah, we all know that. The African elephants are on the savannah. But most people don't know about the forest elephants, which are smaller, and they have adapted to their environment in the Congo. Yeah, they're there. They're small elephants. They're aggressive. They've got short elephant syndrome. they are actually more.
Do they call them pygmy elephants, or what do they call them?
Well, I call them forest elephants. I think they might be called pygmy elephants, but I think that might be different. But I call them forest elephants. The ones I've seen are forest elephants. They're extremely aggressive. Yeah. If they see people, they will attack you. Yeah.
Wow.
They hate them. So they are aggressive. I was chased by an elephant, but not. That was in Kenya. It was by a bull elephant in Kenya, not by one of these forest elephants. But the forest elephants are hard work. Let's talk about people. Okay, so I'm 6 foot, moving through the jungle, much harder work for me than pygmies because they're small. They've adapted to their environment, yeah? And we can see that, island creatures tend to get smaller, yeah? Things on plains, they can roam around. So Bigfoot would be just the same, I would think. It may have a constriction of its gene pool just to isolated pockets, particularly, but I think it adapts to its environment, and those changes in people and creatures can happen very quickly. The Dutch are now the tallest people in the world, but I think in medieval times they were really quite small. But the diet and everything else, they're now the tallest people in the world.
And that's not that long.
That isn't that long.
Not very long, you see. People think, then that's my point. People think about these things have to happen over millions of years. But yeah, growing a new eye, yes, but growing your size, you can change really quickly. Yeah, if America's diet suddenly went poor due to some sort of environmental conditions, poor ones, yeah, and there was not as much dairy around, for example, you'd see people become a lot shorter very quickly.
So here's a question for you, Adam, because so what do you think these bipedal cryptids are throughout the world, including like Bigfoot, Orampendek, the others that you've seen throughout the world? What are they?
Well, it's a complex question, but I'm going to give you a shorter answer. And it's this. Shortest answer I can give, which is what I want people to understand. When I was a child, we used to think there was just us and Neanderthal. And that was it as a species of people. And Neanderthal was essentially some dumb creature. We now know Neanderthal was a wonderful species. Had its own musical instruments, they did, and art, cared for their dead. Yeah, if they were still around today, it would be fascinating to see how they adapted to society. But we bred with them, and Neanderthals are still around. I think up to 4% of DNA is Neanderthal. Tim's nodding his head because he's thinking, well, maybe I'm 3.9. But
not checked. I'm not. There was none already checked, Adam.
I don't think that Ancestry.com is going to be be able to pull Neanderthal DNA. I don't think they're that sophisticated.
but there we are. So, but the point is, we now know that there are many different types of humans: Denisovans, deer people, etc., etc. There are lots of different types. Floresma, all of these different types. Yeah, I know some people think Bigfoot might be related to Paranthropus, one of our older ancestors. I know Dr. Meldrum does. I think Cliff Bartman does as well, but I'm not sure about that. But I think they do. I would speculate if I had to. I think that they are extremely intelligent. There may well be different things in different parts of the world, by the way. We're not just saying there's one creature.
But do you think that maybe they're all primates, you think?
Well, I think that they are related to us in some sort of ancestral pedigree.
So they're hominids.
Yes. And this is my opinion. And, we need to understand that for most of our existence, there were many of these hominids existing with us in different pockets of the world, many different types of species of humanity, for want of a bit of a word. And people find that quite difficult to grasp because we're very egotistical. It's me, or it's us, and it's there, and we're superior. But for most of our existence, we were not the only one. It's only this little tiny bit where we are. And all I would be saying is that in different pockets of the world, it's not entirely implausible to suggest that some of these offshoots could still survive in remote areas. And if they do, I think they'll have a very high level of sentience. And people don't understand how intelligent gorillas are, or orangs. Orangs are extremely intelligent. They can understand very complex sign language. Chimps can do mathematical problems and puzzles a lot quicker, depending on what the problem is, than most people. Gorillas can lie. You look at Coco. You can see this on YouTube. She was a gorilla. She had a pet cat, and I remember her keepers saying, who pulled the sink out of the place where she was staying, and she blamed it on the cat. It wasn't me, it was the cat. What I'm saying is these complex behaviors. Chimps feel jealousy.
Oh, chimps are
Well,
amazing.
I think dogs can do that too.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is there's this very high level of sentience. I mean, with an orang, it can communicate with you 200 different levels of sign language words at least. Yeah. So we don't understand. We underestimate. Number one, we underestimate how clever these creatures are. Number two, creatures which are related to us, hominids which are related to us, will have a higher level of intelligence than them. And I would speculate that they are below us in terms of IQ, but not vastly so. Not vastly so. There would be not that much difference. Obviously, they don't have a technology, but that's a good thing. If they had a technology, you would see they would have been extinct very recently. They could have an element of cultural regression, but fire use, for example, would lead to certain extinction because we would hunt them.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that before too. Yeah, because we could find where they're at.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
So Adam, why don't you tell us about your book?
Yeah, and I'm gonna, for the audience who's watching, I'm gonna pull Adam's website. And so
cool.
Adam's written, I think what, you have 5 or 6 books now.
Oh, right. But the most recent one. Mm-hmm.
Well, I've written, let me break it down. I've written 3 expedition books: Extreme Expeditions 1, 2, and 3. And they are books that, you can see the expedition books there. And they're always with my face on. That Extreme Expeditions cover is my favorite.
Who's that young guy in that photo?
Well, let me explain. Yeah, that's it. So Extreme Expeditions 1 starts off with me. And it's a story really essentially about my youth and how I got into expeditions. Yeah. Each of these books take about at least 7 years, if not 10 years to write. So the next one, I'm probably about 4 or 5 years away from writing it. I want to have good quality material, and I always write my first person accounts of what I've thought and felt at the time. And that's what I write about. They're like diaries, but they take a long time to produce. So the Extreme Expedition books, if you just scroll down a little bit to the one, you can have a laugh at my expense, to number 2.
Okay.
Can you just scroll down a little bit to number 2? Yeah. Now you see on number 2, there's a picture, and the reason I put that picture up in the book is to laugh at my expense, is because I'm smiling in that photograph. You can see in Nepal. That's the one when I went with Monster Quest. And then 30 seconds later, I realized that the mountain that is far behind is the one that I'm actually going to have to climb. So those are my expedition books. Then I wrote 3 novels. My newest one is called Evil in Olenbury, which is not on that website yet. Portals and Monsters and Revenge of the Hairy Man. And then they're novels. Yeah, they're complete fantasy. Revenge of the Hairy Man, I went to Port Chatham, Alaska, and that's set in the 1950s, imagining what the Bigfoot creatures are. Portals and Monsters is imagining a portal and what the nasty creatures are behind it. Yeah. And Evil in Olenbury is actually set in Ohio and is where some sort of twisted creatures and a Bigfoot society appear. And Evil in Olenbury is my latest novel that's just come out. So I wrote Revenge of the Hairy Man because I had long COVID and I wasn't very well and I had some brain fog. I decided to write a novel. That's what kept me going. And then I found I enjoyed writing a novel, so I wrote Portals and Monsters, and then I've written Evil in Olenbury as my latest release. So the 3 expedition books take years to write because I will not do anything other than write my diaries. That's what I want to do. But I found after I wrote Revenge of the Hairy Man, when I got that brain fog, I thought, oh, I quite like writing novels. If I have some spare time, I'll write some more. So I wrote Portals and Monsters and then Evil in Olenbury. And so but I want to make that clear distinction because a few people have got confused. If it's got a picture of my face on it, it's accounts of my expeditions. If it's got a bit of artwork on it, it's a novel. And they are not the same. They are different. Right. A novel is a novel. Yeah, which is what I keep wanting to tell people.
I'm a throw a little nugget out there to the audience. So the Portals and Monsters, they're, and if you read some of Adam's expeditions, the most recent one, you might see why he wrote the novel. Is that fair to say? We'll just leave it at that.
That's fair to say. Yeah, that's fair to say, Tim. Yeah.
All right.
Nicely played, it. I'll give you that.
Thanks. And so for the audience, the best way they can just go to adamdavies.com. I think
you can go to Adam Davis Explorer, and I also have an Adam Davis Facebook account, and they can look on there. My private Facebook, I just fool around on. That's for a bit of fun. The public stuff, I put, if I'm out in an area, I'll put what I find and stuff like that, and that's more research based. So I make a distinction between my private and my public. Yeah.
So the best way to follow you, like on a daily basis, would be on your Facebook account.
On my public Facebook, yeah, but also on my website, John Colson, my buddy.
Or go down to Tennessee and stalk him. That's fine.
No, please don't. No.
Just go to Tennessee. Don't
encourage that, Tim.
Where's like the only British guy that lives here in Tennessee?
Well, I'm pretty easy to find, aren't I, really?
Yeah. I don't think you're going to be able to hide too well down there.
You just have to listen.
Adam, this has been awesome.
It has been awesome.
You've become such a good friend.
I know, we love you.
Yeah.
Adam. You're like...
I hope I see you again soon. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
We will. We're definitely going to.
Audience, I'm going to say this. I love these two. They are great fun. They really are. They are completely genuine, and they're very good people and extremely caring. And they did look after me very well when I was in Ohio at the ABC.
Yep.
So
we take care of people. We love.
Yeah, we appreciate you, Adam.
We do appreciate you, Adam. You're definitely a cool. I can't wait to just hang out with you again.
Yeah.
Yep, go to lunch, talk about rocks, and
you get loads of people saying, "What is this story?" You can explain it, ladies and gentlemen. Over for Tim for that story.
I don't think we're going to explain that on here.
Yeah, maybe later. So,
all right, Adam. Thank you so much.
Guys.
All right, have a great night.
Hey, we'll see you later.
All right,
see you
bye.
later. Bye.
That's
that
so
was
cool.
so
We love
cool.
Adam.
He's the coolest dude ever.
Yeah, we
love
Adam. So thank you guys for joining. Like and subscribe. You can follow us on the Untold Radio Network on YouTube. You can go to thebigfootinfluencers.com.
Twitter.
You can find us. Just type into Bigfoot Influencer. Adam will be in the next book. So that I'm working on. So that'll be so much fun. And until next time.
Yep. We'll see you at the next one.
See you guys later.